Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. We're here live, Q&A with Sharon's son, George. I was my mother's caretaker after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. She passed, unfortunately, on 1/1/2020. We started together for Sharon.com in her memory. Today, we have such an incredible guest, somebody who I admire tremendously and really value her time. So we're going to get right into it. But before that, just want to welcome Secretary Michelle Branham from the Florida Department of Elder Affairs. Secretary Branham was appointed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to serve as the agency head for the Florida Department of Elder Affairs in December 2021. Under this leadership, the department serves Florida's nearly 6 million seniors over the age 60, providing services and supporting initiatives through Florida's aging network to help seniors live well and age well in the state. I just want to welcome you again, and we're such a pleasure and honor to have you. I'm just excited because you're in my great state of Florida. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to chatting with all of your listeners, and I really enjoyed watching some of your podcasts in the past. So you're doing great work, and you're highlighting really important topics, especially neurodegenerative diseases. So I really appreciate that, Dr. Ackerman.
No, I really appreciate your time. And this today is actually not bashing the other many podcasts, but today is a very important one to my heart because, again, I'm a resident of Florida and my mother unfortunately struggled with the disease. And I'm just, this is also, I'm going to learn a lot today. So thank you again. I guess we could jump in with what does the Department of Elder Affairs do? And can you tell us a little bit about your office? And I want to thank your whole staff for being such a pleasure too.
Oh, thank you. My staff is terrific. We say that we are a small but mighty team. So there are 27 agencies that are under the governor of the state of Florida. So ours is one of the smallest, even though we serve an enormous footprint. So Florida has the second highest prevalence of seniors in the country. We have 6.3 million seniors living in our state, about 1,000 folks moving here daily because this is a great state, as you mentioned. It's a beautiful place to live, and under the governor's leadership, we really enjoy a great level of freedom and leadership. So with 1,000 people moving here a day, 25% of those are over the age of 60. So again, we're talking about 6.3 million people already over the age of 60 and more moving here every day. And as a population, we continue to age in Florida. So we don't leave. We like to stay here, age here, and be here with our families and communities. So saying that with a population of almost 23 million people, we have to look at what the infrastructure of aging looks like in our state and ensure that we've got everything that it takes to make sure we're living well, aging well, in the place of our choosing for as long as we choose to do that. So it's a tall order for a state with so many people, but it's a mission, and you know how mission feels when you're called to be there. You're driving every day towards something really important. And then I will tell you too, I came from the Alzheimer's Association where I spent almost a decade of service, and I was the vice president of policy there. So driving important policy related to neurodegenerative diseases and brain health is so very close to my heart, especially with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other diseases that affect so many Floridians and so many Americans. So I think looking into our future, the other thing we can do besides providing great infrastructure for our future is ensuring we're tackling comorbidities like that, diseases like that. Alzheimer's is the sixth leading cause of death in the country. Florida has the second highest prevalence for that disease. So diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's it's imperative that we stay on the very forefront of research and clinical support so that we're doing everything we can to ensure we have a better future than the one we have today with diseases like that.
Thank you. Yeah, we just had in South Florida the IQ, the Michael J. Fox Foundation IQ this past week. So I had the honor to be there, and it was just incredible, really speaking to the community and learning also so much about national efforts. I spoke with Ted Thompson. I don't know if you're familiar. He's in charge of policy. Maybe someday we'll all get together and talk policy because a lot of my background in law and also policing is on in that area. So it's very important. That's why we're doing this today, everyone, because we really want everyone out there to be also aware. Very important. Thank you again. What are some current projects you're working on today?
Uh, Thank you for the question. Right now, and like you said, policy is really important, building an infrastructure for me. So I'm looking at, you get to be a secretary of elder affairs for a finite amount of time. So you're thinking to yourself, what can I do to affect the future? What can I do to change the future and leave legacy that will improve our state and our aging network? So priorities that the department is working on, we have a Florida Alzheimer Center of Excellence. We're the only state in the nation that has the state unit on aging building a center of excellence to support Floridians living with all types of brain health issues and brain diseases and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's. So that has been a significant addition to the agency and one that I'm deeply, deeply proud of. So the work that our dementia director, Carrie Eyre, is doing at building infrastructure and navigating these journeys with these families has been profound. So we met just this week learning how some of these care navigators are working with families to see what we can do to intervene early to make a better future for the family? How can we intervene before a family, and you know this, Dr. Ackerman, before you get into that critical crisis phase where everything's a blur and it's really hard to get everything settled. So how can we help families build infrastructure around our people that we love that are struggling with these diseases? What can we do to ensure that we've got a tremendous amount of support around them? So the Florida Alzheimer's Center of Excellence supports our dementia care and cure initiatives, and we have them all throughout the state. Our memory disorder clinics, which also support Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and all the related dementias. So we have 16 of them, those memory disorder clinics that also report in through the Florida Alzheimer's Center of Excellence as well. And then we have the most funding for the Alzheimer's disease initiative. Again, that includes Parkinson's disease and all neurodegenerative diseases. So that has been profound because the legislature this year, you and I share passion for policy. The legislature has increased the amount of funding we've received. We have the most funding in the country. Again, we know that we have to build infrastructure, so it's not just me thinking that, it's the governor of Florida thinking that, and our state legislature all supporting that. So having all legs of the stool supporting those efforts, I'm hopeful that we can build not just an infrastructure that will support the families currently, but one that can also mitigate the impacts and effects of this disease for the future.
Thank you. And the next area means a lot to me. Unfortunately, I lost my mother, but today I fight for in her memory for all those we've lost, probably millions due to Parkinson's, and today those diagnosed and their caregivers. What, as Floridians now, we're going to step back just to our state. I apologize to everyone out there, not in Florida, but this is what I'm excited about and to learn is what do we do as Floridians, at least, to bring more awareness to Parkinson's disease and hope for a cure, because that's really what keeps me up at night for other people still having to go through this horrible disease.
Well, first, I'd love to tell you that I think the world of you personally for a son that cares so deeply about your mom, and not just. I think of all caregivers like that who have the courage and the tenacity and the wherewithal to try to affect change, even though it may not have helped their loved one. To think about the future is a very courageous and bold act. So I just wanted to tell you thank you for that commitment. Not every family responds in that way, so that's profound to me that you do, and I think that's wonderful. For us, I think the most important thing, and you probably agree, is concern and awareness. So we want to make sure that not only do we spread awareness about the disease and ways that we can look at intervening in our own lifestyles to create support, but also what can we do as caregivers and support teams? How do we get access to the support? And I think that's one of the most critical pieces for me right now. I hate to hear, I wish I would have known about that sooner. That's a terrible thing to hear for a family. So when we talk about the Florida Alzheimer's Center of Excellence and that infrastructure I just shared with you, I want to make sure not only do families have awareness about the disease, but awareness about where to go for resources so they can get the support that they need. But ultimately, I'm like you. I want to end this disease. I want to end these types of diseases. This is where my passion and my heart lie as well. So I think fostering clinical trials, so not again, not concern and awareness just for the disease itself, but also asking people to be bold and be brave and to engage in clinical trials is significant. And then I'll tell you one thing that I think is beautiful on the horizon, because when I started working 10 years ago, all you could say about these diseases, no prevention, no treatment, no cure. And that's a hopeless and a really gloom and doom type of feeling. But now, especially in the state of Florida, and we're not just focusing on Florida. Hopefully, Florida is a role model for all states building infrastructure up and working towards that goal. Is there are a few states like Florida that have a focused ultrasound technology, and that's by an incredible company called Insight Tech. And they have treated Parkinson's. They started with tremor patients, and now they're working their way into Alzheimer's patients as well. And that's working in conjunction with drugs like aducanumab and lecanemab and other drugs that are coming in through the research pipeline, paired with the focused ultrasound technology helps break through the blood-brain barrier and actually create some disruption in the blood and in the plaques and amyloid buildup and the things that cause the degeneration of the disease in the brain. So that has been so significant and profound, working really closely with companies like Insight Tech for a better future. So that's been really exciting and has built a lot of hope in me.
Thank you. And one thing I'm sure you're aware of nationally, it's exciting, is finally last December 2023, the national plan to end Parkinson's disease was finally passed, which I remember I almost cried, even though it's too late for us, it's not for everyone else, but coming to the hopefully the Senate, US Senate this year, hopefully not future, but Senator Rick Scott and Marco Rubio both signed on to the plan. I was wondering now more again towards our state, what resources do we offer in Florida for those diagnosed with Parkinson's disease?
Thank you. And yes, I applaud all the efforts both on the national level and the state level. I think the federal government needs to work as quickly as it can towards these types of diseases. But also on the state level, we can do so much, and we can even inspire the federal government. So I think in this state, working through our memory disorder clinics has been significant because they offer a great deal of wraparound services and will pair you with clinical trials that I think not only may make a difference in the person living with the disease, but to your point, to future generations of those that may also have the disease. So that has been good, but also to when we talk about concern and awareness, to educate communities as well, so that there's no stigma. Or at least we reduce the amount of stigma attached to diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So communities that are more capable of managing different support mechanisms, we call it in some spaces dementia capable or dementia friendly, but that would include Parkinson's disease as well. Too. Not that we're thinking of Parkinson's as a dementia, but it is part of that neurodegenerative. So anything related to that, including Parkinson's, is part of our funding. So our research through the Ed and Ethel Moore Grant Program here in Florida um, also focuses on Parkinson's. Like I said, the Florida Alzheimer's Center of Excellence, our memory disorder clinics, and we have 16 throughout the state. And then all of the research and clinical trials throughout the state too, like the focused ultrasound technology I mentioned, includes Parkinson's in its repertoire of treatments. So I think every time you think of something that may be neurodegenerative, you're thinking about a long spectrum of diseases and disorders that are always included.
Thank you. And we often think about those diagnosed, obviously, because they're going through the struggle. But a lot of time we just never have the time to also think about the caregivers. I'm a former, unfortunately, caregiver, but I still think of the caregivers still today who want their loved ones' memories to live on forever. But then we also shift to those caregivers currently struggling or trying to care for their loved one who's diagnosed. What tips could you give to those listening today throughout the really world, not just specifically Florida, but that might be caregiving right now.
I really appreciate the question. And first, I just want to say to everyone, including you, God bless you. Being a caregiver is really difficult. If you've ever cared for someone for a day or two or three, you think, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Think about it for months, years, and the way that you have and the way that other caregivers have. So I have just a very special love, adoration, and deep celebration for caregivers. You can't think of someone living with the diseases we're talking about without thinking about their caregivers as well. So just hats off to all caregivers, including yourself. It's takes a lot of love and commitment and sacrifice. So I think because we in Florida think about the person living with the disease and the caregiver as one thing,
Mhm.
as really one package deal, we want to make sure that we're taking care of the caregiver as well. So when we're working with these families, we're always taking the pulse of the caregiver to make sure we provide a lot of wraparound services. And in Florida, we have a tremendous amount. I talked to you about the Dementia Care and Cure Initiative. We focus very heavily on caregivers. A lot of the programs that we fund on the state and federal level work with caregivers specifically. And then through our Florida Alzheimer Center of Excellence, just the caregiver is one of the most important places. So programs, initiatives, support services, funding, and the like. We focus sometimes primarily on just the caregiver. And then I would be remiss not to mention as well that a lot of research about caregivers. So, how can we do better to support caregivers? So, a lot of our researchers, one I can think of particularly on the Alzheimer's Disease Advisory Committee, Dr. Labniak, some of her research is really just on caregiver burnout specifically and how we can mitigate the impact of that burnout. So we do that not only through her beautiful research, but also through the Ed and Ethel Moore grant program, which is done through the Department of Health too. So again, I don't think you can think about persons living with a disease without thinking about the people caring for them.
Thank you. Yeah, as we shift to resources, which I like to learn about them, if you don't mind, I'll share your website so that everyone listening can also join in, because it's not just about, hopefully you can see it too, but this is not just about a conversation today. It has to be something that continually goes on and doesn't stop until we find a cure. But I just want to direct everyone to your website, to elderaffairs.org/about-us, and then you'll see the secretary here. And maybe if on the next question, as we're wrapping up shortly, what resources does the Department of Elder Affairs offer in Florida for caregivers and even those diagnosed?
Uh, Thank you so much for the question. So if you go through our website too, you'll also see that we offer an elder helpline. I love that because not every state agency, across the country will have one where you can call in with any type of issue that you might have. And you see that there, that 800-963 5337. That's important because you can really call in with anything. It can be a critical situation where I'm in crisis right now, or it can be something that I just need some help and resources. So that can be a community resource finder for you. So my first line of attack for any support is to call the Elder Helpline, because they will get right into the nitty gritty of your particular community and ensure that they're availing you to all of the resources that are there in your community, including you see right there the area agencies on aging, and they have a tremendous finger on the pulse of the community. So if we don't know the resource, they will. So I think that's one of the most important things to do is call the elder helpline. If nothing else, what that number alone could be very, very helpful, no matter what the question is.
Yeah, I think there's so many amazing resources here that we just need everyone out there to be aware. Also, another link to the website, just nutrition programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and many areas that I recommend. Again, everybody listening right now to please review. Now, to follow up, what research, if you're aware of, is currently being done, if any, in Florida to treat or end Parkinson's disease?
Um, Thank you for the question. So we mentioned the focused ultrasound technology, which is some of the stuff, the research that I'm really particularly interested in, because I see um, I can't necessarily see into the future, but I see so many opportunities there with that. So that's in conjunction with an MRI that works really well, like I said, to break through the blood-brain barrier and actually administer a drug beyond the blood-brain barrier. So the neat part about focused ultrasound technology and technologies and treatments like that is that you can dose at a lower level. So whatever the drug you're offering, if it's beyond the blood-brain barrier, you can dose at a lower level, therefore having less side effects from the drug, which I think is significant too. Some of the drugs that we have out there have some side effects. If we can dose at lower levels, that would be significant. The other thing that I think, and it's not just Florida, that's the great part, is there's a company called United Method, and they do a lot of, they're not the only one, but there are several of them. We just ended up partnering with them on some things that will do some great screening. So I think when we're looking at our baseline health, we think about our numbers for our cholesterol, we think about our numbers for blood pressure. I'd love to see baseline screening for cognitive impairment and other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, because I think then we can start to tackle the diseases a little bit earlier on. Sometimes they are really difficult to diagnose and take years. And by the time we're diagnosing, our family and our loved one is in crisis. So I think anything that we can do to intervene early on. So some of those biomarkers and screenings, I've been very excited to see those because it's panels for not just these diseases we're talking about, but cancer as well. So if we're treating early, we have more options available to us, that as well. And then I've seen some more enhancements in the research pipeline than ever before, which I think you'd be excited about too when you think about it, Dr. Ackerman. If you get a drug like Leqembi or that's working on buying you years of time. We had drugs that were legacy drugs that did not work or staved off symptoms for short periods of time, but be able to treat for even a short amount of time is a very exciting proposition. So, and a drug like Leqembi, it might buy you a stave off of symptoms for 3 to 5 years. And you and I know as family members, we would do anything to have another year, another month, another, of time that, so those types of drugs are very exciting. But to me, the more important thing beyond the drug itself is the energy that the research pipeline now has. So you're seeing the FDA, a lot more things coming in front of the FDA for approval, and also having CMS cover drugs like that so that families can get to those drugs and have access to them. And that's profound and paramount to do. So whenever drugs begin to work, other big companies come in and clinicians get a refresh, restart, and then get excited about the opportunity of building the research pipeline back up. So that to me, and my almost 12 years now working with these types of diseases, it's very exciting to see our pipeline be so robust now.
Thank you. And I think we've learned today that there are a lot of resources now. Hopefully, everyone can share this, tell their friends, their loved ones, and their caregivers that there's so many things out there to support you. You just have to reach out, and you're never alone. On the final question is likely, and probably more than likely, but somebody listening, unfortunately, may have just been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. What advice could you provide for them and their families?
Oh gosh, thank you. And I'm sure you could provide a ton of advice for them as well. I think the first thing that I would do is make a call to an association like you're talking about to see what resources and opportunities we have. And I think the most important thing is to begin to speak with your loved one about what a care plan looks like. So in the early stages of the disease, the person living with the disease can really participate heavily in their care plan. And that's really, really important. So building a care plan, even though it sounds frightening and scary, and it's not something you want to think about, building that early on helps us. And then, of course, education so that if there are things coming down the way, you don't have to be blindsided by them. You can anticipate them and even prepare for them. And I know, as do you, that with these types of diseases, you meet one person with a disease, you meet one person with a disease. It manifests differently in all of us. The brain and the body is a very complicated thing. So I think making sure that dive into all the education as possible. And then you said something that really struck my heart too, is there's a human element to it. So you want to find a support group people that know what you're dealing with and can be there for you and surround you with love and nurture and support. And that's critical because it's a tough road. And we all know that. Those of us that have been through it understand that. So, having a support group, I think, for both the caregiver and the person living with the disease might be one of the most important things we can do.
Thank you. And our timing is just so perfect because next month is Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month throughout the globally world. So this is going to be incredible information for everyone out there. Just want to thank you, your staff, and everybody for putting this together. And it's really, again, an honor to have had the time. I usually end with just a little quote for everybody out there listening. We love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. Well, along with the secretary, I will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I always say I'm just getting started, and I'm really not. But the reason I say that is every time I meet such inspirational people like you and your staff and all those individuals who are looking and wanting information, and you just provided, just rejuvenates me and makes me want to just keep fighting. So really don't know if you had any last minute words, but it's such a, again, pleasure, and I hope this conversation doesn't end today and can continue in the future.
I couldn't agree more. And I just want to say thank you again for not just being a tremendous caregiver to your mom, but also being a spotlight to these important issues and talking about them. And to your audience, I say thank you for listening. And please do think about Dr. Ackerman and all the work that he's doing. Get involved. I think when we get involved, we can affect great change together, and you're not alone. And I think that is the most important thing to know, because this disease and many of the diseases like it can feel so isolating. So if you're worried, if you're scared, please do reach out sooner rather than later.
Thank you again, and thank you everyone for listening. Again, please share this. Please visit the website we just provided. This has been another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son, George, and we got to keep fighting. So thank you again for your time, and we all really thank you for your service. It means the world to me and so many. So thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
My privilege. Thank you.